some of the big speakers we all love today, we follow them and watching their old stuff is painful.
Yeah,
It's
it
like,
is.
they didn't care, and you could see they didn't care, right? Like, don't get in your own way.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Behind Their Success podcast. We have on today Katie Rossler. She is a relationship strategist and therapist with 15 years of experience. She grew up in the U.S., but now her family lives in Germany with their 3 daughters. She works with busy professionals, helping them with their marriages and relationships. Katie, welcome on Behind Their Success.
Thank you for having me. I'm looking forward to chatting with you today.
Yeah, Katie. So Katie, tell us about your business currently. What does that even look like?
Yeah, that is a great question because when you move to another country in which your license is not recognized and your education is like, oh, okay,
It's not really
right? Like, and you're thinking, no, I have more experience than a lot of your therapists that are coming out in the world, but okay, you have to adapt. And so when we moved here, I honestly didn't think I could work. I wasn't quite sure what that would be. I was pregnant with our second, so I knew I'd be taking some time off anyways. And here in Europe, especially in Germany, you get a year of maternity leave that's paid. So that was beautiful to like have some freedom and flexibility. My husband is an entrepreneur as well. So he was coming into that position as I was taking some time off. And it was one of those, you've had these moments where you just in the right place at the right time and it's like a random place. And we were at a playground and there was a fellow marriage and family therapist, older man there with his grandchild speaking English, which, in a German neighborhood, you're like, the one English speaker, let's go be friends. And my husband started talking to him and he's like, Katie, you have to come over here. And I was like, what do you mean? He's like, you have to come over here. So I start talking to him and he's like, yeah, I'm actually doing research on couples and would love for you to come and help translate it and make sure that it's applicable to couples in the States or Canada or Australia, wherever, like, yes, but I have to have a baby first. He's like, I need some time on the German end of the research. Don't worry. And so I contacted him when I was ready and I started with my foot in the door here doing that, just supporting him in his own journey. And then he's like, you can do workshops. There's things you can do here.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, okay. Well, sure. I love to teach. I love to speak. I'll do it. And I started leading workshops for couples and individuals. And then was like, I'm allowed to do counseling here because that word and therapy don't mean the same here. Okay, I'm going to do counseling or coaching, right? And I just was like, let me just jump into this. And from that, amazing experiences have happened. One of the beautiful things about being a couples therapist is you're really good at helping people learn communication skills and relationship dynamics and personality differences. And so companies want you to come and speak and talk to their managers and talk to their teams. And so I started doing that for really big companies here in Munich and internationally. And during COVID, it was needed. They needed a marriage and family therapist to talk about how do we work from home with kids without all going insane, right? How do we make this work when we're both working from home? So I started doing workshops on that, continued my counseling, wrote 2 books, have a podcast. The beauty of online is how diverse we can get with our companies. And whereas in the States, I probably would have stayed in private practice. I might have still spoken at things, but yeah, I wouldn't have had these opportunities. So moving to an international city and having to be faced with, I don't know if I can work again, or at least not in the way I thought, gave me the capacity to think outside the box and to be open to opportunities that came my way. And imposter syndrome got me every step. Like it was like, ooh, I'm not enough. Ooh, I can't. I was invited to speak on a stage in Austria at a big conference and with like huge CEOs of companies, all this stuff. And I was like, who am I?
Yep.
And it was like, no, actually stood my own, loved it, had great feedback. One of the most popular talks people came to because it was on burnout. Who else? Hello. That's what we're all going through.
It's awesome. Like, I can tell just meeting you for the whole 15 minutes I've known you that you're super, super social and dynamic, right? Or around that. But the downside of that is, I'm a very social person as well. The downside of that is imposter syndrome. You really care what other people, despite like all us not wanting to care what other. That is a tendency of some very, very social. So that's something I struggle with a lot, imposter syndrome. I don't know, 10 years ago, people gave me a teaching job at a college and I'm like, what are you doing? Why are you giving me this? But it's the same thing. But like when you step into that, you grow and you step right into it. And
Yeah. And I think the other piece of the puzzle is not only do you have imposter syndrome, but because we're ambitious typically when you decide to really step into this world or this lifestyle, I'll call it, you will say yes to a lot of things because it sounds cool
yeah,
and it sounds right. And sometimes you get to the end of the yellow brick road and you're like, not what I thought. Right.
mm,
Or you meet people who have hit the end of the yellow brick road, like, I wanna be there, and then you meet them and you're like, "Maybe not.
yeah,
Maybe this is not kinda like the physics, maybe these are not my people.
yeah,
Maybe this isn't my way of being." So, there's a lot about this journey that I think is learning about yourself and also checking your ego and
mm,
your dreams and going, "What's my why? Does it really make sense?" Publishing a book, having a podcast, whatever. These things, I had to really look at my why because it takes a lot of work. It's
yeah,
effort. But then at the end of it, what is it I'm looking to get out of it? And how do I pull away my sense of worth and my confidence in myself away from those things?
yeah.
Because they get knocked down on a regular basis
Oh,
if you marry them, right, with those
mhm,
projects.
yeah,
Because stuff's going to fail.
yeah.
Stuff's not going to
Well,
work out. Or you're going to reach, again, the end of the yellow brick road and be like, that's not as exciting as I thought it would be.
yeah, and it's pulling your identity away from the result or the outcome, right? And really attaching, I really try to attach my identity to the process of like,
Yeah.
I'm a person that does these activities, right? And that ultimately stacks up to hopefully the outcome I'm wanting.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I love that you said that, like attaching to the journey because that's where the growth happens.
Mhm.
And it's I always think of it like caterpillar, cocoon, butterfly, caterpillar, cocoon, butterfly. We all want to be at the butterfly stage and stay there, but that's not life. Life is the continual cycle. So as soon as you're a butterfly, you're back in the caterpillar stage, right? Like,
Yeah,
what
yeah.
else do I have to learn?
Yeah. As soon as you're a butterfly, and then, you get that's an amazing thing. As soon as you get what you want, we are so wired to, okay, what's the next thing? And entrepreneurs are even wired to that. For so many of them are just like, they
Yes.
don't even tap the brake to slow down to celebrate anything they've been working towards for years. At least that's, my tendency. It's so important to attach to the process and then also, you know, reward yourself.
Definitely. And honestly, this is a big reason why I started working with like high achieving, busy
Mhm.
couples, and they tend to be entrepreneurs, was because there needs to be a difference in how we run our relationship from how we want to run businesses or check out that next thing and do that next thing. It's like understanding relationship growth doesn't always have those big shoots up. And we go for those dopamine highs. Like we
Oh, yeah.
love the dopamine. We want the next thing, the next thing, and the next thing. And it was funny as I was sort of like deciding which group of people, they kind of came to me. They attracted.
Yeah.
I
Well,
was
yeah.
attracting
You
them,
attract
right? Like
some yourself, and then you attract your people.
absolutely, absolutely. And in that, niche down even further to those who've been together for 10 plus years because we're in that phase of, am I really happy? Is this really what I want?
No.
Is this growing the way I want it to? And I think of that as well in our businesses. There's a point where we hit where we go, even in our journey, is this what I want? Like, what is next? What would be better? What would be that growth? And can I learn how to live in the maintenance phase and not always optimize? Because sometimes we mess up our business growth by trying to like jump. And the same kind of with our relationship where we try to like push it further than it's ready or that we need. Because again, we're hitting, I need that dopamine. I need that rush, that big thing. So it's been fun to be on my own business journey and see how it correlates to the work I do. It's great for examples, right? Like when you work with a couple and you're like, how when you have that experience, like imposter syndrome, how do you feel that in your relationship when new skills come, right? You get to like weave it all together and it creates a vocabulary for all of us to better understand what we're learning, right? Like, oh, I've got that from my own work experience and now I can apply that in my relationship. And it interacts a lot.
Well, yeah, I mean, we like to act like there's separate parts of life or whatever, but there really isn't. I mean, it's all one life, right? Really what's helped me in that area, I'm part of a mastermind group, business owners kind of all over the country, but of course, a lot of our focus is business and strategy around business, but it's about winning in all areas. I mean, we spend a ton of time on marriage work, relationship, children, all that kind of stuff, because it really is. It is all tied together. There's so many entrepreneurs that have an amazing business. The divorce rates of entrepreneurs are sky high because they can't stop chasing that dopamine hit.
Yeah. Well, and counselors are the same. We have a very high, and psychologists, psychiatrists, we have a high divorce rate too. Because if you think about it's like the business thing, right? We're always growing, we're always learning, and
Mm.
it's kind of unrealistic to expect your partner to be that way too
Mhm.
constantly.
Yeah.
So how to find that middle ground. But I love that you're part of a mastermind that does that. I think that's so essential that when we come together with fellow business owners to recognize, honestly, we can't feel successful in life if things at home don't feel good. It's like a holistic perspective on our health involves relationship health too, and our business's health. Yeah, entrepreneurs are cut from a different cloth, right? Like it's just a different way when you think of like the level 10 life or like the circle of life or the
Mhm.
career and this
Like
or
the
that.
wheels. We have
That
the
wheel,
whole thing.
right? The relationships and your personal growth. And I'm just like, career needs to be a way bigger wedge for entrepreneurs. Like it needs to like, and it impacts vacations, it impacts, free time, personal growth, because
Mhm.
our personal growth tends to be focused on growing our business in the
Yeah.
context of us being the leader of it. So it is very interwoven. Yeah.
So, Katie, just, kind of turning the conversation a little bit to you. What do you think's the best skill that's led to your success so far?
Ooh, I'm going to say two things. The first one is the willingness to answer the call.
Mm.
So when someone is out there saying, I need help or I have a question or, a big way that I grew was when I first moved here, just in that first year, again, I didn't think I could work answering questions on Facebook and private groups for fellow moms, for fellow expats living over here, even back in the States, some of the groups I was a part of, when people asked questions, like just being willing to answer those calls of like, hey, does anybody know how to do this? I can't fix it for you and I can't be a therapist in a little response, but I can definitely point you in
Make,
the right
yeah.
direction, right? And then I can become that person that you think of when you see another question in the future. And then I'm in a sense tagged, right? Or, like there's a network building and all I did was answer the call. It's the
Yeah.
same with the first time that I got to speak at a company. It's just answer the call. That's the biggest thing because it's very easy for us to think of the no and why it's a no and I'm not qualified. I've never done this before. You want me to teach at what? Like
Yeah. Yeah.
or you say there must be a reason. Let's see.
Yeah.
Answer the call. And then the second piece is just building those relationships, right? And it's the network, it's the people you keep around you. It's being a person of integrity and being authentic and owning up to mistakes. If I say something incorrectly to somebody or if I offend them, honoring and respecting that, but okay. But also being willing to learn from it. So that's been, I think those two things, answering the call and building the network has helped me grow my
Mm.
business because when you think of, for a long time, I really focused in on grief and hidden grief around burnout. Then when people would hear somebody talking about that, they reference my book, they'd share my podcast, they would, like I became in the forefront of their mind because I was willing to answer the call and build that network. And I think that's as a service-based provider, it's all I can do, right? Like I have to build those relationships. Those are so important.
Yeah. And that's, I 100% agree with everything you say there with, to kind of, I guess, move forward or achieve success. It's, answering the call and build the network. It took me years and years, but like eventually, I really started putting myself out there, right? In a thought, authentic, helpful way,
Yeah.
building works through social media and online. And now, like, what's amazing thing is like a huge percentage of the people I work with, they'll never be in my office. Like, well, I'm all over the country, right? And
Yep.
it's really cool that even more now, it's like, because I've built this awesome network of fantastic people and just being a
Yeah.
helpful person that like, I can go to almost any major city now in the United States and be like, hey, I'm in town. Anybody want to have lunch? Like, and I'll have
Yeah.
somebody, right? Like, it's somebody in my network, which is such a cool thing. And then, talking about what your specialty is, yours is relationship. A lot of mine is X and money and whatnot, but you stay top of mind.
Definitely. And putting yourself out there, like there's a podcast, right?
Mhm.
There's that social media presence, just
Yep.
not being afraid to be out there, not being afraid what people would think of how you look or how you sound or, oh, I'm not really good at that. I'm not good at talking in the moment or whatever. Okay, but you have to practice to get there anyways. And I really love going back and looking at fellow service-based providers when they were first starting their business and watching
Sure.
their videos and being like, God, that is awful. Like some of the big speakers we all love today, we follow them and watching their old stuff is painful.
Yeah,
It's
it
like
is.
they didn't care, and you could see they didn't care because they were like, I'm here, I'm getting in, and they'll tell you it was really uncomfortable in the beginning. You feel that energy, but it's just don't be your own mountain, right? Like don't get in your own way of being able to answer the call, to be present, to be, in people's minds, to be there and to build that network. I love LinkedIn to go, hey, tell me more about yourself. And unfortunately nowadays people use it in such a way
No,
that people are like,
that's just
oh,
so bam.
you're being creepy. But I'm like, and I will say the one thing, which is hilarious. It's the same as a therapist on an airplane. We all know this. It's the same with sadly LinkedIn and things and networking is you have to be very careful once you say what you do because it's like, oh, when you're on the airplane for 2 hours, they're going to be like, oh, you're a therapist. Oh, I've gone to therapy once and da 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 blah, 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 blah. Right. You get all the stuff. But I've done that with LinkedIn too, where it's like, hey, let's have a coffee chat. Let's, get to know each other. And then I just sat there and I was like, well, that was a therapy session for 20.
Give some free
I
therapy.
mean, I didn't mean to ask a question in a certain way, but I
Yeah.
guess I asked questions
Just
in a certain way. I don't know.
yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So sometimes there are boundaries around our networking that we need to do.
Mhm.
But in general, being able to not be afraid to reach out, to connect in order to authentically build relationships and then just see where it goes.
Yeah, add value, right? Just
Yeah.
adding value to relationships. But yeah, no, as a CPA tax guy, everybody has a tax question. I can 100% relate
Yep.
the airplane, for sure.
Are you looking for a new tax experience? Looking for an advisor that actually brings you high-level ideas and proactively plans so you aren't overpaying your taxes? Or how about one that even just responds and communicates in a timely fashion? If any of that resonates with you, you probably just have a tax preparer and not a tax planner. And it is through the tax planning process where all the value is found. I'm Paden Squires. I'm a CPA and owner of WR Tax Planners. We work alongside entrepreneurs and high-income earners, helping them pay the least amount of income taxes, both legally and ethically. We have saved our clients hundreds of thousands of dollars through specific strategies, and we guarantee we can find multiple tax saving strategies that your current tax preparer hasn't told you about. If that interests you, head on over to the contact page at padensquires.com. There you can fill out a contact form and get a call booked to see what it would look like to have WR Tax Planners on your team.
So, kind of, your best skills, we kind of talked about that. Point to one decision that you credit as like your best decision.
Moving to Germany. Oh, my husband would love that. He's German. So he would love, yes. Moving to Germany, I stepped really outside my comfort zone in a lot of ways and continue to be outside of my comfort zone. And I attribute that to why I'm so willing to take risks and not just do the private practice thing.
Yeah.
And, to look at Esther Perel and Brene Brown and the Gottmans and say, yep, I can go that path, right? Like there's no reason not to. I don't have to stay in my little office with a couch and a chair and just tell me how you feel. I really can actually grow things, but I honestly, like I said, I don't know that I would have done that had I not gotten out of my comfort zone and moved countries. I don't think everybody who's listening needs to go do that. I mean, it's not for everybody. But it definitely was probably the most pivotal piece on a personal growth and a professional growth level.
Yeah. And I think 2 points, I would make from that statement is like, one, I think people don't realize how powerful it is to change your environment when you're trying to change habits or whatnot. Like, why does the alcoholic, give up alcohol when they're in, rehab or whatever, or they're in a totally different environment. And as soon as they go back to their old environment, well, there's triggers everywhere, right? And
Yeah.
trying to stay sober at that point is super hard. So changing environment is huge. And it could even be changing something in your room or decorations. Like those things matter to humans a whole lot more than we can give it credit for. Um,
Definitely. I mean, going to a coffee shop instead of being in your home office, like
yeah,
going to a work share place, like something that changes that your mind goes, oh, there's something new, something
yeah,
different. Yeah.
yeah. Oh yeah. So, changing environment, and the other part of that is you made this one big move, right? And it stretched you and it made you uncomfortable. But then as you face that next challenge, you realize I have evidence that I've done this before, right?
Yep.
And it went well. And now you can take that evidence into every other next, uncomfortable situation. Of like, no, yeah, I can do this. I've done this before. And
Yeah.
that's so
Yes. Yes. I agree with that. I would say the second biggest thing that like decision that was really huge was being willing to take a break from couples counseling for a period of time. So during the pandemic, that first year, I was still seeing couples and I was pregnant with our third. So it was quite a time. And I burn out from, there's couples in crisis when they're finally stuck at home together and facing things. And I took a 3-year pause from seeing couples and I started doing that focus on grief and burnout. And that came at the loss of my own mother. And we had had miscarriages before our third child came. And so it was just, that was so, again, you are your own,
your life.
you're living the work you should be doing. And so I focused on that. I wrote the books, I did the things. And it came back into the world of couples when I was working with a woman and she said, is there any chance you'd be willing to see me and my partner? Because you've helped me so much. And I know you've got what would help the two of us. And I was like, oh, yeah. Again, I had so much education and experience as a couples therapist, but in that moment of just a 3-year pause, I was like, I don't know. I've been out of the game for so long, right? Like so long. I was like, couples therapy research just jumped. And I was like, I'm so glad I took a break though, because when you're in something for too long, you miss things. You don't see it as creatively anymore. You're not challenging yourself anymore. And so taking that break and then coming back in and being like, whoa, it brought things to a whole nother level. It brought things to a place where I was even challenging myself to I was going to trainings and I didn't want to do what other therapists were doing or the big guys are teaching. I wanted to incorporate it into the theory I had of what works for my niche. And that has been awesome, but I needed that pause. So that would be the second big decision was don't be afraid to take a pause, but I was afraid what other people would think of me. And I was especially afraid what they'd think when I came back. So it's that confidence that the decisions you make are for a reason. And again, don't get in your own way, but you can pivot, you can pause, you can go back. It's okay.
Yeah. Yeah. That's great advice there. It's awesome every time I have conversations, I'm doing this podcast and it's like therapy for me all the time when I'm doing that or, I'm talking to myself all the time when I'm doing this stuff, but an interesting thing. So, kind of on the flip side of that, Katie, tell us about a big mistake, right?
Yeah. I think a big mistake was there was a point in the beginning of my business here where in a very loving, let's bring us together manner, I brought my husband in and said, will you help me with the business strategy part of this? Will you help me with marketing, all these things, the plan, not the doing it.
The operation.
And that I would say was a mistake because it definitely created a rift between us that even years later, you can feel the sandpaper when certain conversations come up that have nothing to do with right now, right? Like it's all from that past. I know at that time that my thought process in getting my partner on board was so that we could share in this, right? He's a business owner too, but it's product based, very different. He's got a production line, he's the CEO running it. It's a different type of business. So that's where he would speak to me at that kind of university level, like MBA type level. And I'd be like, I don't know what you're talking about, but if we want to talk about reprogramming neural pathways, we can, let's have that discussion. So you can stick with me, right? So that's where it was hard. I wish at that point I had invested in a coach or strategist or someone who could sit down with me and say, let's talk about what a business plan looks like and a marketing plan and what these mean, not just ideas of them, but like put it in action, stick with it. Because then, as much as I love to learn by doing, I do believe there are some things, we can learn from each other,
Mhm.
and it saves some of the despair and frustration and the I want to quit, because it's usually just a couple pieces of the puzzle we're missing that make us feel that way. And as soon as we've got the right person in the network or whatever to come in and go, oh, no, you have these pieces. You just put them over here and it doesn't match. You put them over here and it fits in. It's like, sometimes it doesn't work for couples, right? Sometimes we can't hear from our partner and get that feedback. And that
Yeah.
can cause problems. And I would say that was probably a mistake in the sense of, I wish I would do it differently now. If I
Yeah.
could go back, I'd be like, don't. Great idea. See the
Yeah.
reasoning. Probably
Yeah.
not.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
different personality types, right? We're both firstborn. We're both, go-getters, different
It's just
cultures.
it's like sandpaper a little bit there. Yeah.
Yeah. Different
Yeah.
cultures, different way
Yeah.
of, speaking business, all of these things. And I didn't take all that into account. And there is something about investing in your own support externally they don't know you, but they know business, and they're willing to get to know you and your business to support you, rather than your partner who's like, I think you should do it this way. This is how you should do it. This is the way. And, I'm like, that's not a product-based business.
Yeah. No, to be fully transparent. Yeah. My wife's a pretty high driving lady herself. You look at personality test, even more so than me. It's tough for us sometimes because we both have our visions, and it's often better for us to run and each chase our own things and then come back together and be like, cool, look what we did.
Right. Cheerlead each other on, right? Instead of like, let me try to fix it for you. And you're like, no.
Yeah. My wife doesn't want me coming and fixing stuff for her. And I really don't want it the other way either. Like, I mean, just gentle. So yeah, but the other point is too, is like, I think the big issue you have there is like not finding a person that can just show you the way, right? Or that right person. Like, and that's kind of the whole point of this show, is to show people the way, or all of us to share our mistakes. So like, you don't have to run into the same wall I did or the same wall Katie did, like, and bang your head against the same. It's like, hey, we banged our head against it. Look, we found this path. Go around it. Don't do.
Yeah. And most of us went to school for certain fields that weren't, and let me tell you how to run the business of doing that by yourself,
Yeah.
right? They like shaped us to go and work for someone else.
Yeah. Yeah. And be a part of that business.
Yes. Yes. So most of us are having to learn this. And it's just beautiful to find those mentors who are several steps ahead that can be like, ooh, hold on. You're going to want to have a clear plan of who you want to serve or what you want to do, or what, instead of just being like, I'm here.
Yeah, a guy with all kinds of degrees and certifications here. It's like, yeah, but it really was all money and numbers focused. Like, I was a guy that really had to dive in and understand marketing at a deeper and deeper level, and branding, and all those things, and just all the different areas of the business. Yeah, I understood numbers and money and that kind of stuff, but like, there's several other pillars of the business. Like, if you want to have a successful business, you need to understand that. You don't have to know. You don't have to be the expert, but you need to understand it well enough that you can hand it off to somebody else and be able to trust and let them, and trust and verify that they got it. You don't need to know everything, but you need to have a good idea. Right?
Absolutely. And I do think that's one of those things that is kind of a good sort of segue into talking about, like, when is it time to hire? When is it time to have the support staff, whether you hire someone or you outsource, just being aware that you kind of need to know what it is before you just give it off to them.
You can't just run away from something.
Yes, exactly. And that's really easy to do, especially in the online space, right? Like, oh, I don't really get this online marketing or these ads or whatever. Like, no, you do need to know what you're doing to some degree, because there's checks and balances. You do need to go, is this working for me? Is it not? And again, most of us didn't go to school to learn how to manage people. And when you take on a team and when you start to have people, you are having to do that. You're having to manage them and lead them. And so it's a whole nother level of learning as well. So this journey, you never stop learning. It's wonderful to have those mentors to guide you, but also to do, the work learning as well, whether it be reading, listening to podcasts like this, watching videos, those types of things. I mean, this is also where masterminds are really key, because hearing other people's, oh, I have this question, and you're like, well, I didn't have that question, but now I actually do. And I realized that's what I've been sitting on and couldn't figure out.
Yeah. 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 It's surrounding yourself with great people, especially
Yeah.
people that, you never want to be the smartest and furthest along in the room, right? Just people that are way further along in all the different areas. So you can just glean everything you can.
Yes, yes, definitely. And I think eventually, well, I know eventually you become that person too to other people, right? That's when we get asked a lot of questions.
Yeah. And,
And
and that's fine. It's fine to even have groups where maybe you're the leader and then other groups where you're just full blown student, right?
yes,
And
that's
you're
the
feeding
piece.
both ways, right?
Yeah, there is a place I think where we need to be giving back, and that's a legacy work as well, right? Of let me help those who are behind me, and so that I also get the affirmation of yes, like I have reached this point, and have the group that's ahead of you, so that it's never enough.
So one more question for you, Katie. I know
Yeah.
you'll have going back to, okay, you just showed up in Germany, right? What is one piece of advice you give yourself from your perspective today?
Oh, good question. I think I would give myself one. I would say go learn German better now before you start working. Before you start working, go learn better. I mean, I was learning, but like really get more intense into it. But as far as like personal growth in business, I don't think I would tell myself anything, because anything I would tell myself is butterfly effect, right? Like don't
Yeah.
mess anything up.
Back to the future stuff here.
I honestly would probably just say it will all work out.
Yeah.
Like, because I would never have been able to I mean, you can't predict losing your mom unexpectedly. You can't
Mhm.
predict a lot of the challenges and things you're going to face. Like, you can't predict business and what's going to happen in COVID as a counselor, right? And the types of trauma people are going to experience in that time. So, but it is going to all be okay. And I think one of the greatest tips I could go back and say is every so often do a review. And what are your takeaways from what you're learning right now in this phase of life? And I like to do that every birthday. Like, what in this last
Mm.
year did I learn? What are the things am I bringing with me? And you can do it in the new year. But I think it's something essential to integrating, because we are the type that we hit the goal, we jump to the next one, and we don't stop and go, what did I learn? What am I taking with me? What are these skills? And sometimes we end up having to repeat them because we didn't integrate them. So that would be something I would say is like really get in the habit of, like, if I go back to old Katie, pregnant at that playground, going, "Oh," I would say, one, it's all going to work out, and start integrating what you're learning every year or so.
Yeah.
And that I think is key.
Yeah. And I think it's just all of that is really just taking the intentionality to another level, right?
Yeah.
Like having intentionality behind really everything you're doing and really evaluating everything. Like you say, it's like, is this serving me? It's one, knowing your goals, right? And then evaluating everything in your life. And it's like, does this serve,
Yeah.
to get closer to that or further away?
Oh, I totally agree. And sometimes when you do that review, you still won't have the answers. Like I started an organization here for entrepreneurs for women who speak English a few years ago. And then I got a team to help me co-lead it. It was just volunteer based. And then there was time for me to step back. And there was a while there where I was like, what was the why in that? Like, I loved it but then I stepped away and I was like, okay, well, what was it? And it took a couple years of stepping away for me to go, oh, that's what I was learning there. Yes, that helped with networking and stuff, but there was something like on a bigger level. I hadn't figured out what I learned in that process.
Yeah, that's good.
When that came clear, I was like, okay, I'm bringing that with me every new thing I do along the way. So don't get disheartened if you're like, there, I still don't know why I did that. Just wait, but keep trying to integrate it. Keep trying to reflect on it, because that is, I mean, it sometimes, as somebody who works in the field of like helping you heal from things,
Mhm.
it takes a while to figure out why
Yeah.
things occurred and what you're going to take from them. So,
Yeah. And it's going back, the cynic in me is like, well, just look back and make up whatever story you want that serves you. It's worse.
that's
Because we
true.
really can make up whatever story we want. But I mean, it's really, like I said, it's spending that time, whether or whatnot, but just quiet time of reflecting and trying to build that story of like, what does that mean? How does that integrate into my life? Yeah, that's great stuff.
Yeah.
Katie, it's been a great conversation. I really appreciate you. What is the best way people connect with you or follow you or just to get to know more about you?
Yeah. So I am on LinkedIn and Instagram and Facebook at Katie Rossler. You don't have to put the dots above the O.
You know what?
You don't have to put the umlaut. Check out my website, katierossler.com. And there are other high achievers listening, I'm guessing. The goal setting workbook for couples that teach them how to do that properly and not just, what do you want? What do you want? Okay, how do they come together? But really how to bring them together.
Yeah.
So I'll make sure you have that information. But katierossler.com is the best way to connect with me.
Awesome. Katie, I appreciate so much. Listeners, got a lot of value here. Catch you next time.
Thank you so much for listening to the podcast. If you found it valuable, please rate, review, and share it. That is the best way to help us build this and reach more people, as we're trying to accomplish our goal of help creating more healthy, wealthy, and wise entrepreneurs. You can follow us on social media by searching for me, Paden Squires, or going to padensquires.com. On the website and social media, we're always sharing tips of personal growth, and there we can actually interact. I'm looking forward to it. Thanks, guys.